Over the last few years, Pokemon ROM hacks and fan games have continued to get more and more ambitious, so much so that the quality of games sometimes rival that of Game Freak themselves, which, depending on who you ask, isn't really a compliment. But what I'm trying to say is, some Pokemon fans are very, very talented. Not only talented, but patient, persistent, and passionate. Let me put it into perspective. I don't know about you, but when I think of a game developer, I think of it as a job before I think of it as a hobby. After all, making a video game is no small feat. With that in mind, most people working on fan projects are either doing it alone or are doing it with an incredibly small group of people. Each of them may have school, a job, or both, as well as relationships with family, friends, or even a romantic partner to maintain. Not to mention keeping yourself fed 2 to 3 times per day, every single day, as well as chores, managing bills, and leaving room for some time to yourself. What I'm trying to say is, they're human. Just like you and me. I personally struggle with time constantly, and if I didn't turn the process into content, I would never have time to make a fan project. Balancing life, as well as clocking into your video game development job that you legally cannot get paid for, takes a lot of love and dedication. Depending on the scope of the game you're making, it can take several years. And now that we have decomp ROMs that allow you to directly code whatever the hell you want into the game, I can only imagine the scope of projects getting larger and larger. Personally, having to wait several years before I could show off my work would drive me insane. It's why I imagine so many fan project developers release their games in chapters or betas. Not only is the feedback from your community valuable, but it can also be really motivating to see people enjoy what you've made so far. Now, the reason why this video is titled the way it is because my new favorite fan project, Pokemon Pisces, had a shocking amount of negativity surrounding it. There's a multitude of reasons, and I wanted to unpack that here today. While the examples I'll be using today is about Pokemon Pisces, what I'm saying can be applied to other Pokemon ROM hacks and fan games. So, if you haven't played Pokemon Pisces yet, it's a sequel of Pokemon Emerald that introduces more than 200 Fakemon. It adds so many new moves, items, abilities, and changes a lot of what you've come to learn from playing Pokemon over the years. Type matchups are different, stab and super effective damage have been reworked, there's new status conditions, you travel through the redesigned Hoenn region in reverse, every gym is now a double battle except Tate and Lisa ironically, there's a new type, the Relic type, every Pokemon has its own custom sprite because most of the dex is Fakemon, all of said Fakemon have their own custom cries. It's basically an entirely new game with some recognizable faces from Hoenn. The devs made it the way they would like Pokemon to be played. It's my favorite fan project because of how refreshing it is. So we're going to start with what I think was the biggest complaint. The lack of documentation. The ROM hack players yearn for the PDF documents. As of late, fan projects, particularly harder ones, have been released alongside documentation that goes in depth with information on encounters, boss Pokemon, where to find certain items, etc. The Pisces devs made the decision to release their game with no documentation. This was so people could discover things on their own without a PDF document spoiling everything. In my opinion, this is the best way to experience a new Pokemon game. Completely blind, knowing nothing. Which is exactly what Pisces is, by the way. A brand new Pokemon game. The most fun I've ever had playing Pokemon in recent years is playing through Pokemon Scarlet blind with some friends. We discovered things together instead of just reading about it from Cerebi. Playing the game together while not knowing anything brought out a childlike wonder I haven't felt from Pokemon in a long time. I saw people say they weren't going to play Pisces until documentation was released, and all I could think to myself was, you're not even gonna try? The argument I always see is to let people play however they want. And sure, you can look up information on video games if you're stuck, or if that's just how you like to play. But most video game guides are fan documented. I think expecting a document detailing the ins and outs of a video game to be released day one from the devs directly is not only entitled, but also unrealistic. Like, yeah, sure, even though we just spent the last few years making this game with some cool Pokemon that are meant to be hard to find, let me just spoil its type, its ability, its stats, its level up moveset, and exactly where you can find it along with its encounter rate. Oh, and here's how it evolves, by the way. Oh, and according to the PDF document, it doesn't become viable until level 44 because that's when it learns its best move, so you can just box it until then. Are you even playing the game at that point? You can see it as just saving time, but figuring out evolution methods can be a puzzle in itself. Unless Game Freak's designing it, then don't even, ignore Game Freak. Their evolution methods are batshit. Regardless, half of the fun of Pokemon is discovery. You want to remove all of that by just looking at a document rather than playing the game. If you're playing a game like Radical Red, for the most part, it's the same Kanto adventure you used to, and even with documentation, you'll get your ass handed to you. That game is a boss rush and serves a different purpose than Pisces. Most importantly though, Radical Red devs wanted to release the documents as part of the player experience. The Pisces devs didn't, and I'm glad they didn't. It allowed a community of players to help one another as they each discovered and documented the game together. When a ROM hack doesn't have a documentation and I'm stuck, I go to the game's Discord server if they have one, and instead of asking for help because I'm antisocial, I will search what I'm looking for, and 9 times out of 10, someone else had the same problem as me and already had their question answered. On the topic of difficulty hacks, Pisces was often criticized for being a difficulty hack in disguise. I still see people call Pisces a difficulty hack actually. While yes, the game is harder than regular Pokemon and has level caps, it is far from what I would consider a difficulty hack. The game is balanced around and encourages you to use healing items in battle. I think some players forget that they can use healing items in battle because they're so used to doing challenge runs that prohibit it. Guilty. Personally, I wouldn't say I struggled much with Pisces. For me, the hardest battle was definitely the champion battle. I had to reset a handful of times, to which I was given grief over by commenters of my series that had previously argued that Pisces was a difficulty hack. They basically tried to say, see, I told you it was a difficulty hack, and to that I say, it's a champion battle. I think it's meant to be difficult. And also, I've struggled way more against a random route NPC in Radical Red than I did with the champion of Pokemon Pisces. I think the true difficulty of Pisces comes from a lack of knowledge. As I mentioned previously, the types interact differently and there are so many new mechanics that if you don't read every move, item, or ability description, you're doing yourself a disservice and making the game harder on yourself. And this is another thing that people complained about. They complained about the fact that the Fakemon don't look like their type, because I guess a Pokemon's type is just based on aesthetics now. Like what are we for? Like, come on now. A Pokemon has a little bit of edge to him and he's got to be a dark type. People were complaining that they had to catch Pokemon to learn their type. What did you do in the main series games, man? Oh, is it because you're playing a ROM hack, so it's not actually worth your time? It's just like a side experience. Anyways, back to difficulty. So while yes, you could say I didn't have a hard time playing Pisces because I'm very knowledgeable of Pokemon. That doesn't matter as much though, when Steel no longer resists ice, and I keep forgetting that that has been changed. I had to learn all the new mechanics just like you guys. What I'm trying to say is, if I played Pisces a few more times, like I have with all the main series games over the years, the game would become a lot easier. After all, Pokemon is a game of knowledge. Another criticism against Pisces was, of course, all the mechanical changes. A lot of people are comfortable with Pokemon mechanics and aren't looking to learn anything new. Personally, for me, besides the new monsters, this was my favorite part. I don't think any other ROM hack has ever changed the way Pokemon is played as much as Pisces has. And it was really refreshing to see all the new ideas the devs had. Of course, certain strategies were more overpowered than others, and the devs ended up nerfing them, which was another thing people would complain about. I would see comments about how it's lame to nerf things in a single player experience. But no, it's not. The devs have a vision for how they want their game to be experienced. And if overpowered mechanics are not what they had in mind, they are within their right to change that. Like, yes, you may not be hurting another player by abusing an overpowered mechanic. However, if there's a way you can exploit the game and like just sail through it and not really get the experience they had in mind, then yeah, they should totally fix that. I personally think the devs' intended experience is one of the most important things when it comes to video games. Like, you don't show up to a movie and expect it to cater to your every want and desire. At least I hope you don't. On that topic, I remember seeing a comment when Pisces first released asking if there was a version without Fakemon. They weren't rude about it, at least, but it's little things like that, when worded poorly, that just comes across as entitled. So far, it may just sound like I'm saying you can't give ROM hacks criticism because they're free. But that is not the issue. I've given my fair share of criticism to ROM hacks, Pisces included. It's the way the criticism is delivered that a lot of the time, it just ends up being a rude comment. I'll admit, I'm not perfect. I've definitely come across rude plenty of times, and I'm sure I will in the future as well. But whenever I feel like I've crossed the line, or if I'm made aware that I crossed the line, I'll apologize. So, here's an example of a rude comment. Whoever balanced Rapscallion is an idiot. Boomburst and Throat Spray is so overpowered. That could have just as easily have been Boomburst and Throat Spray on Rapscallion one-shots a lot of things, it's a bit overpowered. It gets the same point of this Pokemon is OP across without insulting the devs. I think there's a lack of respect for Pokemon ROM hacks in fan games simply because they are fan projects. Feels like people see them as a mod that should be molded to fit their specific needs. There was a discussion on Reddit recently actually about how it's cringe for fan project developers to have a no cheating rule. Firstly, most fan projects don't have a no cheating rule. And secondly, if they do, they're well within their right to do so. Can you imagine how bad it must feel to spend years on something with an intended vision of how you'd like it to be experienced, only for people to complain that they can't hack in rare candies? I'm all for play however you want, but if you aren't enjoying a game's gameplay loop to the point where you feel like you have to use cheat codes, I think you just don't like that game and maybe you should play something else. So many people don't even give the games a chance, and they assume that the experience that's been crafted for them isn't going to meet their standards, so they use cheats the first chance they get. Perfect example of this is Celia's stupid ROM hack. This ROM hack is mostly a puzzle game. Because of this, there is a 100% catch rate on Pokeballs and easy access to rare candies, because grinding isn't a part of the experience she's building. Yet, I've seen people hack in Master Balls to avoid the pain of catching Pokemon. Listen, I hate catching Pokemon as much as the next guy, but let's maybe wait and see what the game's about before we start using cheat codes. For me personally, I use cheat codes on games that are mostly just the vanilla experience but with some sprite changes. Unless they have a built-in way to grind, then I will usually use that instead. I saw this one comment on the Reddit thread actually that was like, what do you mean I can't hack the game? You literally hacked to create. I bet they imagined themselves like dropping a mic with a massive explosion behind them after saying that. This is exactly the entitlement I'm talking about, and it's why I think we don't deserve Pokemon ROM hacks in fan games. There you go, the title's been said. Everybody clap. Well, yes, they didn't create the game from scratch. There's still a huge amount of work going into this with nothing to gain but experience. Making a fan project isn't just changing some numbers around. We have people writing custom code for this shit. They basically are making a game from scratch. That was another thing. This post got a lot less positive attention, but someone was asking if devs should be required to make their code open source. The wording on this is the problem. I think encouraging open sourcing is fine, but required? Definitely not. All in all, I think people need to try games the way devs intended them to be played, rather than forcefully molding it to their liking. Even if it's out of your comfort zone. Who knows? You might end up liking it. A big example of this is so many Pokemon fans are allergic to reading dialogue and will complain and say that the game is dumb when they get stuck. This happened a lot with Pisces. So many of people's problems would be solved if they had just read dialogue. I never used to be a huge fan of dialogue-heavy games. It's been an acquired taste of mine. Now I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum where if I'm not talking to every NPC, I'm not getting the full experience. Ultimately though, it's okay to try a game and stop playing it if you don't enjoy it. It's also okay to provide criticism for that game, even though it's free. When you're writing your comment though, try and be considerate of your wording. Even something as simple as, how has nobody thought of this? Compared to, has anyone thought of this? Has a big difference in tone. Bet you thought you'd never see me again. It's been 2 months since I uploaded. Yeah, I wanted to make a video talking about this. I just feel like the entitlement for ROM hacks has been getting a little bit out of control. And I don't know, I'm a big voice in the scene, so I wanted to say, hey, cut it out. Be more mindful. If you don't do any of this, then obviously I'm not talking to you. And listen, I'm not here to name and shame either. Like I said, I've definitely been guilty of doing some of the things I talked about in this video. I'm not saying you deserve to be jailed. I'm just saying, hey, you've been rude. Chill. That's it. If you got this far though, thanks for watching. I have a lot of videos in the works, like a lot of videos, and I've been uploading to my second channel a lot. And I've also been dealing with computer problems. I've been posting about it if you've missed it. My computer has been having issues. It's actually being sent away probably while this video goes up, to be honest. So I won't have my computer again for another week or so. Hopefully it gets fixed for real this time, and I can get back on the streaming grind. In terms of just this channel, I want this channel to be for more high effort content. That's kind of the goal going forward. So I want to put out more high effort videos here. But if you want to see more of me, subscribe to my second channel. I've also started working on a ROM hack of my own. Don't know ETA when it will drop, no idea. Because I'm making the sprites myself. I will probably get some help though. Yeah, anyways, thanks for watching. I've been all over the place, man, but thanks for sticking by me. Thanks for your support as always. And just be nice to each other. The internet is such a, I mean, the world in general now is just such a horrible place. Like, can we just be nice to each other? Like, chill, man.